Okay, so let's talk about try except blocks. So what is a try except block? A try except, well, it's a statement, not a block, but a try except statement is essentially a way to wrap a piece of code that we are anticipating might fail. So let's try print integer hello. Actually, let's not try. Let's just print the integer hello. So we're using the integer function. We are passing it the string hello, and we want to print the result. Well, as you might expect here, that doesn't work because we're getting this value error. So invalid literal for int. So essentially, this error means, hey, I can't turn this into an integer because it's a word. You can't turn a word into an integer. It would work if you passed the string 1 because that's easy for it to interpret as an integer, but the string hello, I don't think so. So what can we do about this? This is where the try except block comes in. So we start it off with the keyword try, and then as with all statements like this, we have to indent after the colon to say this belongs to this. So try, and then we're going to say except, and this is where knowing the error is important. So if we look at our output from last time, we got value error here at the beginning. So this is what we want to handle. So the exception here is the value error. So what do we want to do if there's a value error? We're going to print that's not a valid number. So if we run through this code, we pretend we are the interpreter. So ignore lines 1 and 2, nothing's happening. Line 3, we're saying try. Okay, so we're going to try this code. So what's the code? We're going to try and print this value, which is we are converting the string hello into an integer. So sure, let's try it. But what's this? If we encounter a value error, let's not break execution. Let's not stop. Let's not do any of these things in the console. I've been told that if I try this and there's a value error, I'm just going to move on and I'm going to print this instead. And then what I'll do at the end here is I'm going to print end of script. Okay. So if I run this code, it says that's not a valid number. End of script. And the reason I added this print at the end here is if we go back to this example here where it threw the error, when an error is thrown, and we call errors, we refer to errors as things that are thrown by the code. So if an error is thrown in Python, it breaks execution, and that means that the file will stop running at that point because something unexpected has happened. We've not told it how to handle it. So that's what we are doing here. So this time when it's run, it's tried to do this, it received this value error, and then it knew exactly what to do in that instance. So that's great. But now, what if we didn't have a value error? What if we had a type error? Don't worry about what type errors mean. But that's not the error we're handling. In that case, we still get the execution broken. So you can see here it's thrown the value error because we've said if there's a type error, print this. But that never came up. This doesn't trigger a type error. It doesn't matter what a type error is. That's not what's been thrown here. So the code still broke, even with ourselves in this try block. So that's why it's important to handle your exception correctly. And you'll see end of script never ran because as soon as we hit line 4 and it failed, we called it off. That was the end. So let's go back to our value error so that this is valid again. But let's say we don't know what type of error we've got. This is a little bit with an asterisk. This is considered bad practice in most places. But you can throw what's called a global exception. So error exception. What that means is, well, actually no, sorry, it might just be except. Sorry, forgive me. I might have some old Python knowledge in my head here. Let me try this. That's correct. So you don't actually have to declare the error type here. You can just do except and then a colon. And that means that any type of error that happens here, be that value error, type error, attribute error, don't worry about what all of those are. Just if it was anything at all, it's going to default to this. And you might be thinking, why is that not okay? Why is that not good? I mean, it sounds like that's going to ensure that my code runs. So, you know, that sounds good to me. Well, the reason is that we want to be very intentional with everything we do in programming. So depending on those errors and depending on what you're doing, because this isn't a real world use case, of course, depending on what you're doing and depending on what goes wrong, you might have different actions to take, because those errors would have different causes. So you need to handle those different those causes, those situations independently, because those are different problems. So yes, you can have a global accept, but generally you shouldn't need to. It could be a little bit lazy. Here, there's only one thing that's going to go wrong, and I've handled that. But then at least by ensuring that I am only handling the exception that I want to, that means that if something weird and unexpected happened, let's say, I don't even know if this is possible, but let's just say that Python suddenly thought this function didn't exist. It's going to tell me. And that's super valuable when I'm debugging my script. Because otherwise, if every error is just being bypassed and I'm running a script and something's not working, well then I don't know why. It's going to be so hard to find the root of it. So while errors can be very frustrating, they are there because they're an amazing tool when you learn to interpret them correctly and easily. So with great power comes great responsibility. So with that in mind, I would recommend pretty much 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 times, make sure to be very specific with the error you are handling. But that's the essence of it. Wherever you have a try, you have to have an accept. Try to put the error here. Here's one last thing you can do though. You can say accept value error as, and let's call it E, just shorthand variable name for error. Now I'm going to print E, and let's run this. Okay, so looking at our code here, there's no error been thrown. It has actually ran completely, because you can see it looks very different when we've got an error. We've got this statement here, and it's got this underline squiggly going on, and we've got end of script. The whole code ran, but I'm seeing that output. And the reason for that is in the accept block, I'm saying accept, if we encounter a value error, let's store that, the actual string of that error, let's store it in a variable called E, which is just a shorthand for error in this context. And then I'm printing it. So this could be anything. I could call this E, this could be this, I could call it error message like that if I wanted to. And I run this and we'll get the same output. But we're saying take this error and store it as an error message, and then we can output it. And that adds a lot more control as well, because we can still ensure our script completes, but then if we do encounter an error, we can log it to the console here and we can let ourselves know. So that's really valuable. And I remembered now why I was trying to do accept exception. If you were doing an accept block for everything, so you know that wildcard, you know, if you were doing it like this, so for any type of error, you can't say accept nothing as error message. So that's where we use exception with a capital E. So accept exception as error message. So this will still work for our code, but again, this example, this would mean any exception, do that. And that's not what we generally want to do. But that's all there is to it. So if you're seeing errors come up, usually with things like user input, or if you're trying to pull certain pieces of data and you need to handle like a server not being online or a website not being available or a file not existing, this is how you can tell your code, if this thing doesn't work correctly, this is what you need to do. And if you're seeing errors come up and you're not handling them, just go through and add them. Just look for the exact error type that you're encountering, so, you know, value errors, for example, and handle it. Add some output for yourself, add some output for the user, wrap it in a loop and say, while this is not working, keep asking the user. These are the gateway to creating much more robust scripts.